Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Gooner Ramble podcast. It's Akhil on the hot seat, and I've got my two great guests with me. One is Dave Seeger. Dave, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. And we've also got Chris Howard.
Hello, mate. You alright?
Yeah, very well. So we've had a very interesting last sort of 12 hours or so. We've got through CSKA Moscow, albeit with a bit of a slightly stressful sort of 70 minutes in Moscow, but we got there, and we've just literally been drawn to Atletico Madrid. So there's a lot happening at the moment. At the moment, I've got Sky Sports News on, and they're showing Anton Griezmann's greatest goals against English clubs and Diego Costa's 7 goals against Arsenal. So it's all happening. It's all happening. I mean, generally, what are your thoughts on the draw? I'll start with you, Dave.
Well, we had to beat the best team in the competition if we're going to win it. I guess most people probably would have rather wait to the final. I think I would have liked to have seen it the other way around, i.e. we had the away leg first and the home leg second. I think we've probably got the hardest possible draw we could have got. But it is what it is. I don't think Madrid are the team they were, when they got to the Champions League final sort of 2 and 3 years ago. I don't think they're anywhere near that team. So that said, nor are we. Nor are we as good as we used to be. But I mean, there's no question we can beat them. Would I be confident? Probably not, but we can do it.
Chris?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously we were talking about this yesterday on the Lost Tapes, but I did not want to face Atletico over 2 legs. I think Atletico they're a better team than us. And I think Arsenal being the team that we are, we've clearly established ourselves as a cup team in the last, 5 years or so. 3 FA Cups in 5 years is no mean feat. And I fancied us. I fancy Arsenal in a cup final because I feel like we can raise our game for 1. But usually what happens over 2 legs is you get that, the better teams normally win it. And I think Atletico are a better team than us. And so that's why I'm not 100% happy with the draw. What about you, Ax?
Yeah, I was always under the impression that you want to face the best in the most shortest format. If you think about those kind of games, you think, okay, 90 minutes, let's get to half time 0-0, and then you're just shortening the game. Whereas we've got 180 minutes with Atletico Madrid, they're probably on paper the best team in the competition. So yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the worst possible draw, and it's not a draw I wanted. But saying that, you have to, if you want to win the competition, you have to face who you're given. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm probably a little bit concerned that the second leg is away again. I just think it's you have a different mindset. Even if you get a lead at home and you get a good result, we've seen this week what's happened in the Champions League and also last night in the Europa. So it concerns me that actually having a big lead doesn't necessarily mean you progress. But at the end of the day, we just gotta do what we gotta do, and we just gotta get there, really. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting tie. I mean, Dave. I mean, I don't expect us all to have a full scouting report on Atletico Madrid, but from what where do you think the tie could be won and lost? Who do you think could be key players for us? And how do you see the tie kind of going? What should be our overall strategy?
Well, I don't think I couldn't comment intelligently about the individual players at Atletico Madrid. Obviously, we know the strike force well. I don't think Costa's the player he used to be, although he has a good record against us. Last season's cup final being the exception, but that is the most recent exception. So I don't think he's the force he once was. I think Griezmann is obviously a fantastic player. I think the one blessing we have from what Wenger's saying is that this sort of Mkhitaryan being fit for the final now seems to be he's going to be fit in 2 weeks' time. So I don't know what's changed, or whether that's mind games. But I don't think we'd risk him in the first leg. But it would be very, very handy to have Mkhitaryan to play on the break in the away leg. So I think I would see us. I can't see us not concede. I can't see us, stopping them scoring at the Emirates. But I think we're going to have a similar scoreline that we had against CSKA Moscow. So I think we're going to have to get, a full Emirates, rocking, fantastic atmosphere, and score 3 or 4 times at home, and then go and hope we can sort of shut them out away from home and hit them on the break. And we do have the players, if Mkhitaryan's fit, to do that. So I think it is build a lead. I wish I could say I think we'll keep a clean sheet at home. I don't think we will. But I think it's going to be 3. I think we're going to score 3 or 4 in the first leg, and then go and try and not concede 2 or 3 in the away leg. I can't be more concise than that, really.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, is this the sort of game that will get fans back? I mean, we've talked a lot about the empty seats at the Emirates. It wasn't as bad in the quarter-final against CSKA Moscow. It was reasonably full. But is this the sort of game under lights, big club, we're facing a big club, apart from the fact that it's on a Thursday, this could easily be a Champions League knockout game, in previous years this would have been. Do you think this is the sort of game that will just get fans excited again a little bit? We've got something to look forward to. Yeah, go on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think if you think about it, Atletico Madrid have been going deep into the Champions League for a number of years. We've seen them in semi-finals, we've seen them in finals of the Champions League. This will feel like a Champions League tie. It will be a sellout. They'll bring a decent crowd with them. We will be up. I think the fans will be massively up for it. And whilst it's oddly, even though I fear Atletico Madrid, I don't fear them as much as if we were playing the usual Barcelona or Bayern Munich. I mean, I love going to those games at the Emirates, but I always go into those games thinking, well, we're probably going to lose or draw because they're better teams. Now, I know Atletico are a better team, but I still feel like we've got a better chance of beating them. But like Dave said, over 2 legs, I think they'll score both home and away, which means we would need to get a minimum of 3 goals. But yeah, sorry, going back to your original point, atmosphere-wise, I think it's going to feel like a Champions League. I think it gives us a bit of a boost for the remainder of the season, and it means that certain players are now playing for a very, very big cup tie. The Danny Welbecks, he scored last night. He got 2 at the weekend. He's going to be riding high.
Yeah.
I don't want to be jumping ahead to this weekend, but you've got to chuck him in, see if he can keep his form going and take him, the roller coaster through to Atletico into the semis.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about how we kind of strategize our Premier League kind of games in a second. But Dave, I mean, we obviously, for us, obviously it's a trophy, but I want to focus on the bit about getting back in the Champions League, because that's what's spoken about a lot. The fact that Atletico Madrid are second in their league, I think it was about 68 points. They are about 11 points behind Barcelona, but they certainly look like they could get a slot in the Champions League via their league. How will they see this game? Is it just we want to win every trophy available, and the Champions League actually doesn't come into it because we're in it anyway? And is it therefore more important for us? So what I'm trying to get at is who will feel the pressure more?
Definitely us. Yeah. No, I think it's Atletico are a big club. They want to win. They want to win every competition they enter, the same as Arsenal should. And they've obviously done a lot better in Europe in recent years than we have. So I didn't realise they climbed back up to the sort of heady heights of second in their league. Certainly earlier in the season they were sort of they weren't doing quite so well. So I didn't realise that, to be honest. But no, I think for us, for me it's a byproduct. If we win the trophy, we get in the Champions League. I'm just focused on winning the trophy, to be honest. We could have been 2 years ago. We could have won the trophy, and we wouldn't have got in the Champions League. It is what it is. It's a nice to have, and obviously it's very important to us. But for me, it's all about winning the trophy. And we have an opportunity. We have the players to score the goals. The problem's going to be preventing them scoring too many, as Chris said.
Yeah. And Chris, I mean, obviously we're kind of speaking sort of 12, 14 hours after the CSKA Moscow game. I mean, what if I gave you 1 minute to summarise your thoughts for the game? We obviously didn't have the greatest first half. We looked like we were a goal away from going out, but we did manage to show something and draw the game and get through. I mean, what were your thoughts on the game generally?
Well, I think we started the game very introverted and within ourselves. It looked like an Arsenal team that almost wanted to metaphorically sort of have the hand up and keep CSKA at arm's length. But the problem with Arsenal, as we've sort of alluded to, is we just can't do that. We haven't got the defensive stability to be able to deliver on that kind of performance. And so what we ended up seeing was after the first 15 minutes, I thought the first 15 minutes would be pivotal, and I thought that would set the tone. But actually, it was more like as soon as the first goal went in that set the tone, and we were sort of at arm's length. And as soon as that goal went in, wobbly knees amongst some of the players out there, and we never really recovered. And CSK, if they had a little bit more shakes about them, probably would have gone on to do what some of the other teams have done in the competition. But there was two key moments in the entire game which effectively defined the game. The first was their first goal because it set our team, on tenterhooks, and then it was the Danny Welbeck goal. Well, actually, it was probably the miss that just went past Czech's right post when Ozil backed out of a challenge on the edge of the box, and then a couple of minutes later, Welbeck scores, and it totally knocked the stuffing out of CSKA. So those two moments absolutely pivotal.
Yeah, Dave, thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Chris. I thought if we I thought we'd be riding out a storm for the first 20 minutes, and if we did that, we would go through quite comfortably. As Chris said, there wasn't really a storm in the first 20 minutes. In fact, if anything, we started the better. We had a couple of chances that, with better passes, we would have had two clear-cut chances. We certainly looked the more creative, although not playing well. And then all of a sudden, that mistake by Petr Cech, and it's 1-0. And as Chris said, they suddenly believed that they could do it, and certainly it was very, very scary for a period of time. The Welbeck incident was fantastic, and it struck me. I was listening to Talk Sport this morning, something that Alan Brazil said, and it's and Ali McCoy saying he's a confidence player, Danny Welbeck, and his confidence is sky high. And when he is playing that well and his confidence is high, he's a very, very, very good player. We just don't see it often enough. We saw it towards the end of last season. We're seeing it again now with sort of 4 goals. Is it 5 goals in 4 games or 4 goals in 5 games? His confidence is up, and it's going to take something to dislodge him from the side, to be honest, because he gives you so much work rate. And if he has the end product, it's going to be interesting. I think what's going to happen is we'll see do 2 different formations in the sort of the home and away leg in the semi-finals, where we'll play all out attack at home because we had to, and perhaps we'll see Mkhitaryan, Welbeck, and Ozil behind Lacazette, and then in the away leg we'll see something a lot more conservative. But no, yeah, fantastic. And Ramsey, by the way, fantastic. And El Neni, both of them just ran for 94 minutes. Just unbelievable engines, a pair of them. Really impressive.
Chris, I mean, someone who's got obviously some sort of noise around him is Jack Wilshere. Pretty much most of the season, Arsenal fans have been calling for a contract to be signed, and there's been a little bit of give him what he wants, and then it's gone a little bit different now. I think Aaron Ramsey's got a lot of the headlines, and people are now starting to say give Aaron Ramsey what he wants and all that sort of stuff. So where are we with Jack? I mean, he obviously had that injury when he was called up to the England squad. Has he quite recovered? Because it sort of, on the evidence of on the pitch, it may suggest he hasn't.
No, I don't think he has. I think I listened to the Arscast and they were talking about this a while ago. It looks as though he's fatigued. I don't know whether or not it's fatigue because he hasn't. I don't know how many games he's played this season, but we've seen a notable decline in the last month, I would say. I thought he was poor last night. A quick bingo game. Guess, for the two of you, guess the minute in which Jack conceded possession in the match, because I actually made a note of it.
3.
Yeah, 2. It was 2 minutes.
I just guessed.
2 minutes. Within 2 minutes, he'd conceded possession or got nudged off the ball. That happened multiple times in the evening. I thought it was, as I said, poor last night. I thought it was poor against Southampton when he came on. I thought it was poor against CSK, and I didn't think he had a very good game against Stoke. And whether or not it's because he hasn't played this many games at this intensity for Arsenal, for a while, I don't know. But you can't honestly look at, if you take the Arsenal sort of spectacles off, and we all love Jack because he's been at the club since he was 7 years old. it's nigh on 20 years. He's one of us, but his decline is evident. And I think if you were looking at it with a pragmatic eye, you'd then start to look at people like Maitland-Niles, who has shown promise, and other players, and you're thinking, are we, to use a Wengerism, are we killing the careers of those types of players just for sentiment with Jack?
Yeah, Dave, what's your? We know you're a big fan of Jack.
No, I am a big fan of Jack, but I think
and rightly
who's
so.
a fan of football, and anyone who's a fan of football should be a fan of Jack Wilshere.
Well, especially anyone who's a fan of Arsenal should be a fan of Jack Wilshere. But
I don't know. I mean, people do say, is at this time of the year, if you haven't had a full pre-season, it starts to catch up with you. And what Chris says is right, but he has played a lot of games. Slow start, slow introduction to Europa League after the broken leg. Didn't have any pre-season. Was I think shepherded quite well by the club. Odd 20 minutes here, odd half hour there, just playing in the sort of the League Cup and the Champions League, the Europa League. But then since then, with other injuries, he's had to play a lot more football than I'm sure the club would have had planned in his programme. And he held up incredibly well, I think, in sort of maybe certainly between November and January. And that's when everyone was saying, he's earned it. In fact, when he wasn't in the team, if you recall that game at Swansea, when he was rested, we were absolutely diabolical without him. And that's when everyone was saying, crikey, give him the contract. Subsequent to that, as Chris says, he hasn't been at his best. I personally, I don't think he's worth a pay rise. I equally don't think, I think it's insulting to ask him to take a pay cut because of fitness, when he's barring a broken leg, he's played non-stop for 2 seasons. I think he's all equally, poor. But if he'll stay on what he's currently on, I would happily see him stay as a very, very good squad player who can make an impact off the bench. What he's not going to be, barring injuries, is a regular starter, and he may well choose to go and be a regular starter somewhere else because he loves playing football. He's that sort of guy. And there's a lot of money on the table for him if he goes because he's a free agent. Couldn't blame him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that kind of goes. But Chris, you talked a little bit. Well, Dave talked a little bit about Welbeck and about confidence and all that sort of stuff. So looking ahead to kind of Newcastle on Sunday and generally our sort of Premier League running now. What should the tactics be? Should there be a big rotation, 7-8 changes every game? Should it be a bit of a balance? I mean, obviously this Sunday it's a little bit niche. It's not much recovery time away from home, whereas you would think the following week against West Ham would have had a week without a game, so it's a little bit different. But generally, starting with Sunday, I mean, what happens on Sunday? I mean, should we care about the Premier League?
Momentum. That's the key word that keeps ringing in my head, and I think that's quite key. We were talking about this previously, but what is it? Is it, Dave? Is it 6 wins and a draw? Did you say last night? Yeah. So we've had 6 wins and a draw. We have some momentum with us. We haven't played amazingly, but momentum can be a very, very important thing in your locker. I think this weekend. I think, as you said, Akhil, this weekend's a tough one. You've got players like Ramsey that you don't really want to risk. You've got players like Koscielny that you don't want to risk. I'd probably even put Welbeck into that bracket because he's had his injuries. So even though I said, chuck him in, the more I think about it, actually, is this a game in which you say, all right, the players that have got that propensity for injury, we just hold fire. And then certainly when we're back into the swing of 1 game a week, so next weekend, I think it should be as many players, as many of the first team squad as available, because the challenge that we've got is we've got to keep momentum, but also you don't want to end up wrapping these players in cotton wool so that they don't play at all. Like, they're going to have to play some sort of part in it. How that works, it's going to be quite a challenge for Wenger to, not this weekend, because you can palm it off as, well, recovery time, but certainly against West Ham next week. There's decisions that need to be made because you can't just play the reserves for 2 weeks because you're not going to have players that are match fit or up to their absolute physical peak.
No.
Yeah. Dave?
No, I think there's 2 ways to look at the league. Can we catch Chelsea? Potentially. Does it make any difference to finishing 5th or 6th other than pride against Chelsea? No. Does finishing sixth make a difference? Yes, because obviously it guarantees European football without winning the trophy. So we have to win 4 out of our last 6 games to stay ahead of Burnley. Mathematically, we've got a Man United game in between the 2 semi-final first and second legs, so that's a tough one. I personally, I would continue to play as many first-team players as possible, whilst taking the opportunity to mix and match some of the players that we need to give time to because of contracts. Like I think Reece Nelson will probably need to get some game time to convince him to actually sign the contract that's in front of him. I'm sure he will. I also think the one I take a look at, Monreal was being targeted last night, and I think we need to find out whether Kolasinac is the player to take over from Nacho long term. Well, I don't think any of us have seen enough to know that yet. So I would certainly give Kolasinac many of the league games and leave Nacho, and certainly, as Chris said, leave Koscielny for the cup competitions. And also play Mohamed El Nani, every game at the moment, because he seems to be the fittest player at the club. Yeah. And it's funny how you look at, you think, well, is the contract thing weighing on Jack's mind as well as the fitness? And if it is, then I think you've probably seen the opposite effect on Mohamed El Nani, because the club's shown they want him. He signed a new long-term deal. He's got a pay rise, and he's playing like the man who thinks he's been, the cat's got the cream. So he's obviously playing very happy. He knows he's off to the World Cup. His confidence is high. He got 2 assists last night. So right now, we can rest players confident that we've got someone who's, in the old days, like we had Edu to come in or Parler to come in. I wouldn't say he's in that category, obviously, but he's a confidence player, and he's playing well, and he works hard. So I would put him all over John Shelby at the weekend. So there's certain things we can do, but I don't agree on the Welbeck one. I would keep playing him while he's fit and confident.
Lee Dixon sort of recently said about sort of Gilles Grimandi being that player, that you want all the good players, even the flair players, wanted to play with Gilles Grimandi because they knew he would do something that they're just not willing to do, So it was, it's.
Well, Coquelin was that player for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was. Chris, sort of, Dave touched on it, and I think he's only said it because he knows I said it yesterday, but that Man United game does fall in between the first and the second leg. Generally, fans have been slightly unforgiving when we go to Old Trafford. Obviously we've got the Jose Mourinho effect, but, Man United is one place where we absolutely hate to lose. But this season, do we get a bit of a free ride? Does the club get a bit of a free ride out there that actually, in the grand scheme of things, as long as we perform against Madrid, Old Trafford actually doesn't matter and it comes as a bit of a nuisance? Or do we look at it as one of those weeks where if we can beat Madrid and get a decent result at Old Trafford, that could be a massive week for us, going forward and winning the Europa League?
Well, at the risk of sounding like I'm flip-flopping within the single point of a podcast, within one podcast, I would take the Mourinho approach last season. Do you remember he just completely mugged us off by we beat them, and then he just sort of shrugged it off and said, I congratulate the Arsenal fans, they've finally beaten me. And he basically, in not as many words, said, yeah, but we've got other fish to fry because we're in Europe and you're not, and you've got nothing really to play for apart from an FA Cup. So I'd love Wenger to absolutely mug Mourinho off and do the same thing. But also, I think some of the players like Reece Nelson will benefit from playing in even more hostile environments. We've spoken previously about the Southampton game and the Stoke game, or the Southampton game particularly, where Reece Nelson started. There's a difference between starting at home and, in the comfort of 56,000 Arsenal fans behind you and 72,000 or 70,000 United fans just baying for your blood. That can be the makings of certain players. And if someone like Reece Nelson goes into that game, puts himself about a bit and has a good performance, then we can really start to get excited about what the future holds for that young lad.
As long as he's not a right wing back.
Yeah.
Reece is obviously one that we've mentioned. Is there anyone else, Dave, that you're kind of looking forward to seeing a little bit of, whether they're young players or whether they're, even if it's players like Alex Iwobi and you think actually there's a bit of a chance for him in the Premier League to regain that early form that we saw when, he burst onto the scene. Is there any kind of players you're particularly looking forward to seeing?
I remember, I think we've only seen him at right back once this season. I think he might have even been, maybe only twice or once. I'd like to see Maitland-Niles get a few games at right back for Bellerin. I don't think that weakens us defensively. I'm not even sure it weakens us offensively at the moment with Bellerin, but I don't think. I mean, he's a good player, and we've seen him play solidly with the odd mistake here and there at left wing back or left back. So I'd like to see him get a chance to play 2 or 3 games between now and the end of the season, or take part in maybe at least 2 games at right back. I would like to see that. As for Iwobi, I just can't make my mind up at the moment. When I see him carrying the ball like he did when he came on last night, ball at feet, dribbling, he's as good as anyone we've got. But he's so slow without the ball, and his speed of mind just isn't there. I mean, that shot last night. I mean, what was he thinking? Why didn't he just cut back onto his right foot and just pushed it into the corner there? It was a player with confidence would have done that, and I fear for his chances of playing for Nigeria in the World Cup the way he's playing at the moment, even though he was their hero and getting them there. So no, I'm not overly concerned. I'd rather see Nelson play ahead of Iwobi. And I think, to be honest with you, with Aubameyang playing and Lacazette not able to play, I was in favour of seeing 3 going back to sort of playing an all-out attacking 3 behind Aubameyang. But I would be quite happy if that was Ozil, Welbeck and Nelson in a game or 2, rather than Mkhitaryan, Lacazette and Ozil. I was quite in favour of seeing Lacazette and Aubameyang playing together. But now, Lacazette was definitely off the boil last night, so he does need game time. But yeah, no, I think I'd like to see Reece Nelson like Chris, and I'd like to see Maitland-Niles at right back. And as I said, I'd like to see Kolasinac get 2 or 3 games at left back as well.
Chris, anyone else you're particularly looking forward to seeing?
Well, Maitland-Niles, but mainly in central midfield, because I think we haven't seen enough of that. And if you're going to do a bit of rotation, if he does end up rotating, then why not? And if Jack Wilshere, what I don't understand is if Jack Wilshere isn't signing a new contract, which we all think is probably the way this is going, then why is he playing him so much? Why not? It's certainly in the league games. Why not when he's fit, obviously, give Maitland-Niles a shot. So I wouldn't mind seeing that.
But Jack hasn't been playing in the 2, Chris, in the league. He hasn't been playing in the 2. It's been Xhaka and Ramsey.
Didn't he? Okay, I stand corrected then.
Not often anyway. He's been more in the 3 when he's been playing.
But I'd push Ramsey forward and I'd sit Maitland-Niles perhaps alongside Xhaka or something like that. But certainly, I'm looking forward to seeing Maitland-Niles, less so Iwobi, Reece Nelson. Those are the main ones.
Fair enough. Okay, well, that's kind of brings me to the end. I want to do predictions, obviously, one for the Newcastle game and one for the Europa League semi-final in terms of are we going to get through or not, and maybe even give a prediction for the first leg. So, Dave, Newcastle first.
My first prediction for Newcastle was between now and then Ozil will have a minor niggle or flu or a cold. Yeah. Might travel. And
no, I agree.
We'll beat them 2-1. And also, I won't care if he does. And we'll beat them 2-1. And for the first leg of Atletico Madrid, I think 3-1.
Yeah. To Arsenal? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bloody hope so.
And then, I'm presuming you're not going to predict a 2-0 Atletico win in the second leg. So would Arsenal go through?
No. I think if we score 3 goals at home and they only score 1 or none, that's what we need. Yeah. I think we need to score 3 though. I really think we need to score 3.
I have been just told actually that Diego Costa went off yesterday with an injury, so a thigh injury. I don't know how bad it is or what, but potentially could be.
You sound like a professional with a little microphone in your ear somewhere.
It's literally a tech.
News just arriving from Jeff Stelling.
Yeah, well, I'm literally in a WhatsApp group with mates sorting out our flights to Madrid. So, this is we're 12:30 on the Thursday, so about an hour after the draw. So and someone's just mentioned it. So yeah, that is my Sky sources. Chris, prediction?
Does that mean is Fernando Torres still there then?
He is. He's announced he's leaving, isn't he, at the end of the season? So he is still there now. Yeah.
Diego Costa will be back for our game. Come on, he'll eat some horse placenta or ingest some small children that have healing properties of some kind, and he'll be fighting fit.
Okay, prediction for Newcastle, Chris?
I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I think it's going to be a turgid, horrible game, which is great because I'm going up there, so marvellous. And in terms of the Atletico, I think it's going to be very tight. I think we will concede. I think it's going to be I'd plump for a 2-1 Arsenal in the first leg, but I think we're going. Oh, I don't want to be a neg here, but I think we might go out. Sad face.
Well, I'm not going to cancel my hotel in Lyon just yet.
Me neither.
I think my prediction, for what it's worth, I think Newcastle, I think because of the recovery time, because of, I mean, they haven't got much to play for either. I think they're 10th now. They're about sort of 10 points clear of Southampton. So they're kind of safe. They've had a good run. I think they lost to Leicester last week, but they've generally had a good run. So I'm going to go for a 2-2. A 2-2 draw for those reasons. And I think in the Europa, I'm really torn. I'm not sure I know what I think yet. I'm certainly going to spend the next week watching Atletico a little bit more and just finding out a bit more about them. But with the first leg at home, I'm just hoping we get a lead. So, I'll go 2-1. I think it will be tight, but I just hope we have a lead to take into the second leg. But I hope it's not a big lead. So I hope there's no complacency involved. I hope we do have to go there, in a big game, with that sort of big game pressure on us. But a 1-goal lead would do me. So I'll go 2-1 there. So let's see what happens. But there's plenty of football before that. So, let's see what happens. Right. I want to thank my guest, Dave. You can find him on, what's your Twitter handle?
Gooner Dave 66.
Gooner Dave 66. And Chris?
At Suburban Gooner.
There you go. So give them a follow, or maybe not, depending on what you've thought of the last half an hour. But please do give the Gooner Ramble a follow, subscribe, share, retweet, comment, and all that sort of stuff. And we've enjoyed this half an hour. We're all quite excited, I think, for Atletico. So let's see how it goes. But from all of us at the Gooner Ramble, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whenever you're watching this. But enjoy the game on Sunday. Up the Arsenal.
Or listening to it even. Up the Arsenal.
Laters.